Welcome to the DiscipleSmiths podcast. We're going through the entire Bible in 1 year. This is part 7 of that study in Genesis chapter 20 through 22. This is the DiscipleSmiths podcast. Well, hello and welcome back to the DiscipleSmiths podcast. We're looking at the entire Bible in 1 year in this study. We are on part 7 in this video. We're going to be looking at Genesis chapters 20 through 22. And so if you want to follow along with me, I'm going to read through the text of the scripture. We're going to be following along in the Holman Christian Standard Version of the Bible. For me, it's just the easiest to read. It has great study notes through here, and so we're just going to venture in and see how this plays out. Genesis chapter 20. It says, "From there Abraham traveled to the region of the Negev and settled between Kadesh and Shur. While he lived in Gerar, Abraham said about his wife Sarah, 'She is my sister.' So Abimelech, king of Gerar, had Sarah brought to him. But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, 'You are about to die because of the woman you have taken, for she is a married woman.' Now Abimelech had not approached her, so he said, 'Lord, would you destroy a nation even though it is innocent? Didn't he himself say to me, she is my sister? And she herself said, he is my brother. I did this with a clear conscience and clean hands.' Then God said to him in the dream, 'Yes, I know that you did this with a clear conscience. I have also kept you from sinning against me. Therefore I have not let you touch her. Now return the man's wife, for he is a prophet, and he will pray for you, and you will live. But if you do not return her, know that you will certainly die, you and all who are yours.' Early in the morning, Abimelech got up, called all of his servants together, and personally told them all these things, and the men were terrified. Then Abimelech called Abraham in and said to him, 'What have you done? Why have you done this to us? What have you done to us? How did I sin against you that you might have brought such enormous guilt on me and on my kingdom? You have done things to me that should never be done.' Abimelech also said to Abraham, 'What did you intend when you did this thing?' Abraham replied, 'I thought, there is absolutely no fear of God in this place. They will kill me because of my wife. Besides, she really is my sister, the daughter of my father, though not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife. So when God had me wander from my father's house, I said to her, show your loyalty to me wherever we go, and say about me, he's my brother.' Then Abimelech took sheep and cattle, male and female slaves, and gave them to Abraham, and returned his wife Sarah to him. Abimelech said, 'Look, my land is before you, settle wherever you want.' And he said to Sarah, 'Look, I am giving your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. It is a verification of your honor to all who are with you. You are fully vindicated.' Then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, his wife, and his female slaves, so that they could bear children. For the Lord had completely closed all the wombs in Abimelech's household on account of Sarah, Abraham's wife." Chapter 21. The Lord came to Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah what he had promised. Sarah became pregnant and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the appointed time God had told him. Abraham named his son who was born to him, the one Sarah bore to him, Isaac. When his son Isaac was 8 days old, Abraham circumcised him as God had commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Sarah said, "God has made me laugh, and everyone who hears will laugh at me." She also said, "Who would have told Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne a son for him in his old age." The child grew and was weaned, and Abraham had a great feast on the day Isaac was weaned. But Sarah saw the son mocking, the one Hagar the Egyptian had borne to Abraham. So she said to Abraham, "Drive out this slave with her son, for the son of this slave will not be a co-heir with my son Isaac." Now this was a very difficult thing for Abraham because of his son. But God said to Abraham, "Do not be concerned about the boy and your slave. Whatever Sarah says to you, listen to her, because your offspring will be traced through Isaac. But I will also make a nation of the slave's son, because he is your offspring." Early in the morning, Abraham got up, took bread and a water skin, put them on Hagar's shoulders, and sent her and the boy away. She left and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water in the skin was gone, she left the boy under one of the bushes. Then she went and sat down nearby, about a bow shot away, for she said, I can't bear to watch the boy die. So as she sat nearby, she wept loudly. God heard the voice of the boy, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, What's wrong, Hagar? Don't be afraid, for God has heard the voice of the boy from the place where he is. Get up, help the boy up, and support him, for I will make him a great nation. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. So she went and filled the water skin and gave the boy a drink. God was with the boy, and he grew. He settled in the wilderness and became an archer. He settled in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother got a wife for him from the land of Egypt. At that time Abimelech, accompanied by Phicol, the commander of his army, said to Abraham, God is with you in everything you do. Swear to me by God, here and now, that you will not break an agreement with me or my children and descendants. As I have been loyal to you, so you will be loyal to me and to the country where you are a foreign resident. And Abraham said, I swear it. But Abraham complained to Abimelech because of the water well that Abimelech's servants had seized. Abimelech replied, I don't know who did this thing. You didn't report anything to me, so I hadn't heard about it until today. Abraham took sheep and cattle and gave them to Abimelech, and the two of them made a covenant. Abraham separated 7 ewe lambs from the flock, and Abimelech said to Abraham, Why have you separated these 7 ewe lambs? He replied, You are to accept the 7 ewe lambs from my hand, so that this act will serve as my witness that I dug this well. Therefore that place was called Beersheba, because it was there that the two of them swore an oath. After they had made a covenant at Beersheba, Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army, left and returned to the land of the Philistines. Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba, and there he called on the name of Yahweh, the everlasting God. And Abraham lived as a foreigner in the land of the Philistines for many days. Chapter 22. After these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham, Here I am, he answered. Take your son, he said, your only son Isaac, whom you love. Go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains I will tell you about. So Abraham got up early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took with him 2 of his young men and his son Isaac. He split wood for a burnt offering and set out to go to the place God had told him about. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. Then Abraham said to his young men, Stay here with the donkey. The boy and I will go over there to worship, then we'll come back to you. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and laid it on his son Isaac. In his hand he took the fire and the sacrificial knife, and the 2 of them walked on together. Then Isaac spoke to his father Abraham and said, My father. Isaac said, The fire and the wood are here, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Abraham answered, God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. Then the 2 of them walked on together. When they arrived at the place that God had told him about, Abraham built the altar there and arranged the wood. He bound his son Isaac and placed him on the altar on top of the wood. Then Abraham reached out and took the knife to slaughter his son. But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. He replied, Here I am. Then he said, Do not lay a hand on the boy or do anything to him. For now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your hand from your only son from me. Abraham looked up and saw a ram caught in a thicket by its horns. So Abraham went and took the ram and offered it as a burnt offering in place of his son. And Abraham named that place the Lord will provide. So today it is said, It will be provided on the Lord's mountain. Then the angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time from heaven and said, By myself I have sworn. This is the Lord's declaration. Because you have done this thing and not withheld your only son, I will indeed bless you and make your offspring as numerous as the stars of the sky and of the sand of the seashore. Your offspring will possess the gates of their enemies, and all the nations of the earth will be blessed by your offspring, because you have obeyed my command. Abraham went back to his young men, and they got up and went together to Beersheba, and Abraham settled in Beersheba. Now after these things, Abraham was told, Milcah also has borne sons to your brother Nahor. Uz, his firstborn, his brother Buz, Kemuel, the father of Aram, Chesed, Hazo, Pildash, Jidlaph, and Bethuel. And Bethuel fathered Rebekah. Milcah bore these 8 to Nahor, Abraham's brother. His concubine, who is named Rumah, also bore Teba, Gaham, Tahash, and Maacah. Lord, may you bless the reading of this word, and may it transform and shape our minds into who you've called us to be. Amen. Okay, so some more plot issues with the story of Abraham and Sarah. I'd mentioned this once before, but Sarah is actually the half-sister of Abraham. We get the actual confirmation here. They travel to the land of the Negev, the region of the Negev, and Abraham tells the king there, King Abimelech, that Sarah is actually his sister. Now, the Lord is going to punish Abimelech. He comes to him in a dream and says, "You're holding this man's wife." Abimelech's like, "I didn't know she was his wife. He never told me that. I didn't do anything, so please don't punish an entire nation for innocence," essentially. So whenever he questions Abraham about it, we get this explanation. Hey, I didn't think that you would listen to God to any reason whatsoever, and so that I didn't get murdered by you and your people, I lied and said she was my sister. But it wasn't actually a lie, because she is my half-sister. We have the same father, but she has a different mother. Now, this goes back to my bloodlines theory. I'm not sure who the mother is of Sarah. I'm under the assumption that she was also of a pure bloodline from the unbroken line of Seth. And she comes in, and you get this pure, undefiled line. Now, the plan was to have offspring through Sarah and Abraham, but just like everything we know of from Satan, he's going to try to abolish God's plan for humanity. And I think this was one of the ways that he attempted to do that. I think Satan may have intervened in the situation and cast doubt in Sarah's mind that she would ever conceive and have a child. And so Sarah sends her slave girl to marry Abraham, and they have a child together named Ishmael. Now, if you all know of Ishmael, the Muslim faith believes that Ishmael was actually the son that Abraham tried to sacrifice, and they trace everything through Ishmael. And so it is a little bit of a contradiction between Christianity and Islam. Not a little bit, it's a major contradiction. The truth of Scripture says that it was actually Isaac that went up to be sacrificed. Now, the people of Ishmael, since they did have Abraham's genealogy, basically, God is going to bless them and make them into a great nation. But he's not going to bless all the people of the world through this nation. And I believe that that's why there's still enmity today between Christians and Muslims. If they trace their root through Ishmael, it just only makes sense. Some of their doctrine essentially is to label anybody who is not a believer as an infidel, essentially. And so you have this juxtaposition between these two dominant religions. Abraham has this issue. He celebrates Isaac's wean day, which is a weird concept. Like, whenever a child is weaned, you don't normally celebrate that day, although we have, kindergarten graduations and all kinds of strange things that we never used to celebrate. So, hey, times and culture change. But anyways, Isaac is in the middle of this celebration, and then there's Ishmael over in the corner kind of making fun of him. So Sarah's like, "Hey, Abraham, your son Isaac over there, and Hagar, your slave girl, are making fun of my boy. You need to send them away." So Abraham listens to the Lord and sends her away. She wanders in this wilderness. Now, once again, from our first session in Genesis, we see this sort of idea back and forth where you have these gardens where it's safe, where the Spirit of God is, where there's nutrition, water free flows there, and then you get this concept of the wilderness. The wilderness is where the Lord is not present. You're not going to receive that spiritual enlightenment and awakening. There's not going to be much food or water or anything like that unless God directly intervenes. And so she is sent out to the wilderness with the son Ishmael, and that's exactly what happens. There's no food, there's no water. She abandons her kid a bow distance away and says, I can't even watch him die. I'm just going to sit here and cry because this is going to be awful. But the Lord shows up and meets her in that place. We see also the story, it's a strange account of the sacrifice of Isaac, where God calls on Abraham to offer Isaac, his one and only true son, to be sacrificed on Mount Moriah. Now, Abraham is going to be obedient. Now, I see a lot of people, they talk about how Abraham tells his servants that we will return, like Abraham knew all along that God was going to spare his son. But I don't necessarily think that's the case. Do I want to say that Abraham was a liar? Well, not necessarily. But what do you think the servants would have done if he's like, oh yeah, I'm going to go sacrifice my kid up here? It was kind of a strange thing. So I don't know if that he actually knew that he would be returning with his son. Now, I think he knew that the Lord would provide because he had provided his whole life. But maybe he thought in the next life or whatever. And so he goes up, he's getting ready to strike the killing blow on his son Isaac, and then the angel of the Lord appears and stops him from doing that. The Lord does provide a ram in the thicket there, and that's where you see this kind of story come to an end, where Abraham actually offers a sacrifice of the ram instead of his son Isaac. Now, this is a foreshadowing, obviously, of Jesus Christ. God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever should believe in him should not perish but have everlasting life. We see this. God is willing to do anything that it takes to reach down or reconnect with the people who have gone so far astray. He's offered that free gift, and we see this all the way in the Old Testament. One of the last things I want to talk about real quick is it talks about Rebekah's family. Now, you'll know that Rebekah is going to be Isaac's wife, and you see she is also of the same bloodline as Abraham. And so we're going to get this continuation of a pure, undefiled bloodline from the line of Seth. It just sort of makes sense that way. But again, if I had 10 hours to go through all the things, I could cram pack that in there. My particular strength isn't to shrink things down, it's to overcomplicate things. And so I am working on just hitting the bullet points really quickly. I could get some things wrong. I try to prepare so that I do not, but it will inevitably happen. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, accusations of gross negligence, then feel free to come talk to me about it. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching the Bible in 1 Year, Part 7. This is the DiscipleSmiths podcast.